Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is Jones. Report is for the 30th of June, and we had our cyan candle with our new little up arrow, and we get another 3.25 points. Interesting from our previous hinting period of the last month of May. We were at a total of 46.25, and we add a few more. We added the 4.5, 3.25, plus this one on these signals, and doing nicely. Again, it's only lost once during the year. Just would be completely crazy not to take those trades as they come. So that fit right within. I mean, we expected some weakness. We did see some because we had the rising cyan here. We've now moved the steel solid out of safety zone. The rising aspect of it, though, obviously indicated bulls. We need to see a pivot in green. The fact that red moved above white and stayed above the zero was helpful, and that sustained your ability to stay up. Not really do much, but just at least hold off any significant selling. When it comes to our daily setup from the MBI OPSs, those positions still in there and doing fine. They could take days and days to resolve to the positive side of it. No surprise, I usually lock in gains once they get to a certain level and just re-enter if they dip back below. That becomes the easiest way to do it, particularly if you're playing day. If you're more active, someone who's not can just set it and forget it. You don't have to think about them. If you just put in your stop and you know what the profit target based on the ATR is, it's pretty straightforward. 5,000 tick. Interesting today. It was mostly choppy. We had a few little reds where we expected some of our dip, and then we finally came out to a nice move here where deep red, but we came across the green above, and then I look for that nice little dip where you get steel comes below, crosses above those green, and then once you start seeing your uptick there, a little white candle came and represented it on this one. This happens to be remembering the buy sell C on here, and would correspond to as well to a couple of other different candle structures, but rising red, not even seeing the green dip below. It's pretty straightforward, and it just kept going. It was a nice move. It's funny because we usually call them late Friday buyers, and that's typically what they do is they anticipate positive Monday action. From the 50K standpoint, nothing unusual. I did set a stop though. Is that above or below its entry? I think this entry was higher than that. Yeah, this one's at 47. This one's at 44. So that's slightly below what the entry, but far above where the normal stop would be. It first started with 37.75, so it's moved up. Those of us who played this one correctly from these entries took our gains. Reestablished at the very time that this was just getting out as we were making higher pivots from the green. And so we're able to catch a little bit of an improvement, which is always nice to do. Gives you the flexibility to take additional gains as desired. In Q, we can see that slight benefit. You have the green both rising as well as steel. That was just enough to keep things going. You're going to need to see that progress, though, and have the green break above red and continue to move up, and be nice to see cyan dip back below zero. Red still in control there, being on top. And that just indicates that the conglomerate nature of buyers is still strong enough to contain any sellers within the current construct. So no real objections to that. The YM likewise had just been taking a breather here. It's now getting to a nice oversold. Pivot here will be a nice increased green, and you really need to see the red pivot at this particular point because now you've reached this matching point. If we dip below that, then I might expect a little bit more of a trail off, potentially revisiting these lows down here, which is not all that horrific. We didn't see an improvement per se from the extreme. Nice to see it move back above the -50, in which case then I would expect a significantly stronger move to the upside. So that'll be easy to see come first thing late Sunday afternoon as futures open. USO just holding on, doing fine. That safety zone in there, it's easing off its overbought configurations, and you actually have lower science, so you're not really seeing any new strong short activity. So if we see cyan pop up, then we might expect a little bit lower, but right off the ABMs. Nothing too dramatic there. Yeah, the slight burst for the TLT on this move, but then we began the day with a pivot lower, and the higher gap up just faded very fast and actually turned into potentially a bearish spider developing with it. But this rising red means you still have some good strength in there until that starts to fade off. I wouldn't expect anything but just more of moving sideways with it. Gold, likewise, has just been kind of flattening out after we had the huge pump. Nothing in particular here in the safety zone down here. Good long trend buy setup there, so there's plenty of support liquidity-wise, keeping gold upwards at. And the euro, still within a reasonable bearish configuration. Did have a slight pop in there, but we pretty much held within the exact same zone. So it really hasn't moved a whole lot, and that's just because red has just continued to rise ever so slightly. We'll make a higher pivot though once it does start to come down, which would make any new buy attractive. Love to see the steel dip back down below and give a new clear buy. That would be a much stronger trend run as opposed to just this chopping around. I mean, it's been a buy since we turned green here, obviously at the 1.35, so it's almost a penny there change. And now you got a new upside target, 137. So that's a whole nother half cent from where we're at. Still decent enough move. Look at some of the basic ones. AIG had been in the safety zone within this dip. It's now reaching oversold. You had your first improvement there. An extreme histogram produces a nice orange dot setup. Just a green pivot to the upside, or at least getting steel above would be the number one, configuration where then you would be able to look for a pop. It's a pretty strong decline in here. I would imagine you might even start to see some dark red numbers develop. So I'd be cautious on not following a tight stop with that. Still play it, but you just have to be more cautious when you see the potential of that further decline. And X continuing to do just fine within this soft malaise, but a gentle rise of the red. A little bit of slight bearishness, it just caused me to move my stop up in between probably the magenta and yellow. At that particular point, you get a little more flexible when it breaks out like that. CLF, no surprise with that weakness, but it is still moving higher with the red in that, so I would expect that still to turn around. Got a little overbought within that, so you kind of ease that back off again. Still projecting the higher targets. We had that 1571 mark right there. It's a little bit of weakness in there. Opportunity to take it. No surprise though with that cyan rising. And again, until you get this steel that comes back down below, it's going to look a lot like we were seeing for weeks and weeks from WLT. And well, even JCP had the same situation until it broke down. And then boom, once you get these moves back down below, you get much better results from your positive rises. It's a pretty nice return back move. And like WLT, we're looking at where the steel came, give you your first buy cross. Boom, yeah, we saw the red. What does that suggest? Yes, you're going to come back to about those levels when you get your peak sell signals. And it came in right up here, the start of the morning, and sure enough, it proceeded to nearly get all the way back down to there. So it works quite beautifully if you just pay attention to it. The key is paying attention to it. Let's run through our numbers from the radar screen real quick. Starting here at the bottom of the NASDAQ. Nice mixed bag. I mean, it's been pretty healthy overall. It's interesting because as we go into July, I tend to look at the setup prior to the holidays because oftentimes we get a lot bigger volatility swing as we approach that July 4th holiday. And some of it has to do with those who are in town, out of town, liquidity changes. And a lot of times algorithms want to take advantage of limited liquidity. And we tend to see a buildup that generates a spike move. So I'm definitely going to be watching that closely here on the readings in the next day or so as we get right into July. And I think that it could present some a little bit more dramatic moves that people may not quite be ready for given where things are at. Did I already run through the Dow? I think I did. There we go. And let's take a look at some of the alert stocks as well while we have a chance. Apple, knew we liked it. We had started here with the 1. We saw the improvement on the next day with the 2. Pop up here now. We got the red above, the green above the red. Red starting to pivot upward. We had the pivot right here. The key is if we get overbought, unfortunately, before we break out into the new zone, that would be the only concern. We just need to continue to see cyan dipping, and obviously the steel moving above also is another buy above the cyan right there. So we just need to see that continue and green shoot up above. But nice to follow that. There's a beautiful clear up run here with that steel staying in the safety zone all the way through this down pivot, and why I told you jump on every buy you could that came in on those 15-minute signals. Amazon just flatlined. Still okay. It's just flatline. Nothing really exciting. Baidu was nice because it had dipped in the safety zone, gave the new buy from right here, and still looking very healthy within that. FAS had been a barometer that we've been looking at for maintaining strength. Had a little bit of weakness built into it, but within the safety zone, so we weren't concerned about it. Starting a new buy setup when it crossed over to start the morning, and supporting well off the ABM readings right there. So that's another positive. And that extreme moving higher anyway, again, is exactly what we look for a nice configuration. Facebook continuing its nice little move from buy setups there, that red rising continually, keeping the red down here underneath. Perfect run. So nice and easy to see it when it develops that way. It just took a little while to start building. Google was within that deep zone here, but finally when the yellow candle came in and we crossed above, we'll break out from it. Still pretty decent though. It might see a little weakness with that steel dip below the cyan, but that was just about a retrace of this segment over here. Not quite there yet. With that rise of the red, I think that the potential for continuation of the run-in, particularly if green pivots before it crosses below red, then you should see a nice spike to the upside. Netflix, we've been a huge fan for so long. When the readings are good, and look at how it stayed in that safety zone. Cyan below all of it. Finally here you get a little bit of a pop, but still below red and white, so no change in the continuation for that. PCLN, I've been dogging on that, other than we've had some little buys in between, and I said that they would take place intraday, but with the deep red, we were expecting it to come back to retrace those. Some people were mocking that, when I was talking about it at 1220, mentioning the 1187 range down here that it could dip to. Nice couple of day decline takes us right near 1200, so would not be hard to see that happen in a day to get right to it. Tesla had been solid with his moves. It's cyan right underneath there. And if, I know I go over this daily and talking about these things, but the more you begin to see it, the more you can realize how trustworthy it is when you see the configuration like that, and that, there's safety in understanding what you're looking at. And that's the most important part, is knowing, so that you don't have the concerns. Obviously, cyan dipping below red, white, all of that's beautiful here for Twitter, and Twitter responded. So there you have it in a nutshell, and very clear. Going to be looking forward though to seeing how the daily moves, because we still expect it from our Starhawk, Ironhawk to continue to finish. Obviously the ATR on those was right in that mid 12 range, and at the 1.2 still looking at somewhere in that same kind of 14 point range above 49. So somewhere in mid 60s would be the expectation for finish on there. Obviously with the combined Ironhawk in here doesn't need to be as much, because it'll take the two and look for that same 14 on a combined. Let's see where the second one was at 43. So yeah, right around 60-ish or so would be enough for it to take its gains and be very happy with it. So, and it should get close to taking it to new equity highs. We can take a look at that real quick on a performance report. I have sent out indicators. Password will change to start the month. We're so close to new equity highs on that, and that would take to 70. So yeah, that would be just enough to get there. So we'll see. It should bring it back up over 3. This is a much longer time period, going back to 2003. On these individual day trades, and with our expansion of the DOC, the new version that I'm looking at is even more substantially fantastic as far as the readings. Just not ready to release it just yet until I've finalized a few more of the details on, but there's a lot of the work that takes place behind the scenes, And why shouldn't it? Always looking to improve and make it even better for us, just so that it can be even easier. And we started that with the alerts on the DOC paint bars for those with the indicators that will allow you to put them on the radar screen and get the yellow candle alerts as they pop up, or you can even add the magenta in there, or even just the red and the white. You can pick and choose what you want, which just gives added flexibility. And flexibility means you can customize it to what you want and the time frames you want, which is always fantastic to do. As always, though, could you look for me on the private Twitter feed, Skype, StockTwits? Trade well.